Hi everyone, welcome to FW Live. My name is Melissa Fulton and I am the Managing Editor of Future Women. We are in for a real treat today. We are joined by the delightful Dans Bain. Hello Dan. Hello Dans.
Hi.
Uh, I'd like to acknowledge the beautiful Dja Dja Wurrung country that I've come to you today from, the land of the Jara people in central Victoria. I'd like to acknowledge their elders, past and present. Sovereignty was never ceded, and this always was and always will be Aboriginal land. Now, welcome Dans. Dans is a multidisciplinary artist, a feminist, and a social justice advocate coming to us from Naarm. Is that correct, Dans?
Yes, I'm currently on Wurundjeri land, and I base my practice around Naarm, so in and around Melbourne.
Fantastic. It is our great pleasure to have you on FW Live. Today, we're going to be talking about Dan's very powerful and deeply moving work, The Lost Petition. This is a work that Dan's began in 2021. It's a very confronting and moving work that speaks to the lives lost, the lives of women and children that have been lost since 2008 as a result of gendered violence in this country. And I'd just like to pause there just for a moment to acknowledge that what we're going to be talking about today is a little bit tricky. It's sensitive stuff. Please look after yourselves if you feel like you need to step away from the broadcast at any moment. If you need to take a minute, that's absolutely okay. We'll make sure that all the information that you need to get along to Dan's exhibition is available through our social channels. So you can check in later if you like, or dial back in when you're feeling ready. So Dans, thank you so much for taking the time out to talk to us. Could you maybe begin by giving us a little bit of context about how the Lost Petition started for you?
So physically, the Lost Petition started last year, but I think I'd been carrying that idea for a while now. Probably the last 4 years, I was part of a feminist group that would form every year on International Women's Day and join in Hosier Lane to sort of reclaim the space, not just for women, but children, non-binary people, create a safe space to sort of express feminist views, let children do what they want to do on the walls. And through that 4 years, I created a series of work that was celebrating women. It was calling for women to be in public space on monuments and statues, because there is a lack of women represented. But at the back of my mind, you see such a small perspective of women and children being murdered by men on the news. And I was following Destroy the Joint and Sherelle Moody, and I was just, in the back of my mind, it was getting heavier and heavier. And I think it was during lockdown that I decided, I was inspired by The Great Petition by Susan Hewitt and Penelope Lee. So that's for those who don't know, it's a sculpture that's in Melbourne behind Parliament House, and that references the women's right to vote. It's a big flowing sculpture. So I had an idea to create a petition listing the women and children who've lost their lives. And sort of, I don't know, when you're kind of driven to do work like that, I didn't think about the logistics of it. The spending of 4 days on the floor writing names, and it became like a family affair. Everyone helping me in my family, because I had a 9-month-old at the time, juggling childcare with my parents and my partner helping. And it was an extensive project.
Wow. It is. It's extraordinary in scale. For those of you who are listening in, the Lost Petition is 30 metres long. Is that right, Dans?
Yeah, so it's 11 bed sheets, so single bed sheets, which my mum sewed together. But I'll be adding, it started off as 11, I think, and now it's 12 bed sheets, but I tend to add one for each year.
It's just staggering when you think about what the size of those sheets and the names on those sheets and what they represent. Can we ask what number are you at now? How many names of women and children are on those bed sheets?
Yeah, so I started at 898 last year, and now it's at 1,024.
And just to repeat, that's 1,024 women and children who have died as the result of gendered violence since 2008. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's extraordinary to think about the extent of this epidemic and the how quiet we are in terms of the coverage about it, how little we talk about it. The numbers are staggering. 1 woman every week dies as a result of male violence. 1 in 3 Australian women have experienced violence. And when we're talking about First Nations women, the numbers are extraordinary, something like 35 times more likely than that.
And that's the thing. When you look at the names, you do recognise names, but there are more often than not you don't recognise names, and there are many unnamed women and children on there. And it's just the tip of the iceberg, really, because this list is sort of the worst outcome. There are women and children currently living in situations that aren't safe. And this is the final worst outcome for those women and children. It goes beyond the list of victims and their families and the communities they're connected to.
And I think, Dans, what is so extraordinary and what is so moving about the work that you're doing is you're taking those people who are suffering in silence or who have suffered in silence and have paid with their lives, and you're bringing those names into the light. And I'd just like to ask you a little bit about how that happens. As you mentioned, there are lots of people who suffer in silence whose names are not known. I know that this work has been a collaborative one for you. Can you tell us a little bit about the collaboration and the research that goes into documenting these women and children's names?
Yeah, so I reached out to Sherelle Moody. She's a journalist, award-winning journalist, and she's been researching and recording the killing of women and children since, I think, for 8 years now. So I reached out to her to see if we could work together to use that research to inform the petition, and she was very gracious, and she's been very supportive. She's been working in that space for a while now, and I'm relatively new to working in this space, so it's been a really great, almost, she's like my mentor in a way, working together, and it's just seamlessly fit. And same with the exhibition, like coming together and creating work together, because we created a mural earlier this year in Hosier Lane, which was the Femicide map, over a couple of days, and it's just amazing, you know, just naturally coming together and everything aligning and working for the same thing. So it's been great working with her.
Yeah, and if you'd like, people at home, if you would like to check out Sherelle Moody's work, she is the founder of the Australian Femicide Map, the Red Heart campaign, and She Matters. We can pop up her website details as well on the feed if you'd like to check them out. Can we talk a little bit about your process? You know, it's been, I mean, every day, every week, there are these sort of hideous numbers and reports coming in all the time of the way people are suffering. It comes to mind, you know, somebody who died horrifically and very sadly just a couple of weeks ago was Cassius Turvey, the Noongar boy, the 15-year-old Noongar boy who was attacked when he was getting off the bus. Can we talk a little bit about your process as you're adding to this list and you're writing these names on their list? What is that like for you? What do you go through?
Well, Sherelle and I are in fairly constant contact with one another, and she'll send me the names of people, women and children, and I tend to sort of collate them on my end into a spreadsheet, because I found if I'm regularly adding names to the list, I'm sort of living and breathing it, and it becomes too much. So with the installation at her place, I sort of left the last series of names since it was at Incinerator Gallery to do in the gallery space and record it, because I feel like for me it's a real meditative process writing those names. I sort of become very quiet and introspective, and it's like for me it's remembering and saying those names so they won't be forgotten. So I sort of create that space for myself to do that. And I guess on the other side of that is having contact from friends and families who've lost their loved ones. That's kind of another space that I was new to me starting this work, and I feel very privileged being part of that space. And in a way, I know people ask me, how do I do this? But in a way, I'm able to give back. I'm able to give them space. I'm able to offer them a space to come to remember their loved one when their lives have been stolen. So in a way, that's how I can kind of alleviate the emotional side of things.
It feels like a good point now to bring up that this work is called the Lost Petition, and it is indeed a petition. It looks like one. It's an enormous one. Earlier this year, back in March, when we had the previous government, you brought the Lost Petition to Canberra ahead of the budget announcement.
Yeah.
Can we talk a little bit about that process and how your work was received?
Yeah, so that came about after I took the work to March for Justice in Melbourne last year. Everyone was saying, so what's the next move? What are you going to do? You're going to march this into Parliament? And I was like, oh, it's kind of like a day-to-day thing with me. I think being a parent in Melbourne and living through lockdowns, everything's day-to-day. So it's hard for me to look beyond that. But I thought, well, okay, I can do some fundraising and get it to Canberra, which is what we managed to do. And Sherelle Moody came along as well. And I had a fairly quickly growing support within Labor and Greens MPs. I wanted bipartisan representation, so I did contact everyone I could contact. But on the day, it was the Greens and Labor MPs that came out and spoke to the work, took time with the work. And it was really moving. The only thing that was kind of a bit disappointing was there was 2 men and everyone else were women that had come out. So I think it was 1 Labor MP was a man there. So it was good to have that audience and good to have that reception and good for them to reiterate what they're offering within their parties for women and children. And it was quite an emotional time because after that we went to the Aboriginal Tent Embassy because it was important that I stopped by there and met Gwenda Stanley, and she was very gracious with her time. And so she asked me to unfurl it at the Tent Embassy. So we did that, and we did a live broadcast to her Facebook following, and we discussed the issues with First Nations people and colonisation and violence. So that was, even though that was like quite a private moment away from the media at Parliament House, in a way that was such a special moment for me because that's such a huge part of the work that I do, is recognising First Nations people.
Absolutely. And since then, there has been a change of government. Last month, the National Plan to End Violence Against Women and Children was announced, the 10-year plan. We've had the announcement of what has broadly been described as a women's budget. Do you feel hopeful? Is there cause for hope?
Well, my partner often says, so how long are you going to be doing this for? And I said, oh, well, there's a 10-year plan now, maybe 10 years. I don't know. They say 10 years, but honestly, I don't know. I think we'd be world leaders if we could do it in 10 years because this is a global issue. And I don't see myself stopping anytime soon. I want to be optimistic. I really do. And, I have received an invite to take the work to New South Wales Parliament next year. And hopefully there's scope to take it to every Parliament in Australia. And we start seeing change and we can bring people together to demand change and be heard, the people who aren't being heard. But, I don't know. I don't know. I'm hopeful.
I understand that no doubt there have been challenges making a work like this as well, and that you've encountered a fair degree of pushback. Could you talk to us a little bit about some of the major challenges that have come with sharing this work?
Yeah, so I don't think this work has been anywhere and not received any pushback. And funnily enough, it's like it was a work I made to be in public space, and it sort of changes its context a little bit when it's in an interior space. But I've had some of the most amazing interactions with people sort of at March for Justice and out on the street. So many people said to me, it could have been me on that list. And thank you for doing this. But then we take it to institutions like Parliament Melbourne and gallery spaces, and suddenly it's like, oh no, we can't have this here. Or Melbourne Parliament, I was told 2 or 3 days beforehand that a survivor that I'd lined up to speak was not allowed to speak because They said that the Queen's Hall at Melbourne Parliament is apolitical and only the artist can speak. And it's like, well, my work is political. What I have to say is political. So you're silencing victims and survivors. This is ridiculous. And so everywhere it's gone, there's, even when I feel like I've been welcomed, there's an element of pushback from someone. And usually it's like, you know, upper management or up the food chain, someone's not happy about it. Because it is an uncomfortable work, but that's kind of the point. You know, we have a giant war memorial in Melbourne. We see the names of dead people there. Why not the names of dead women and children? Like, we should be dealing with this issue.
It's a really interesting double standard, and I think it sort of highlights the importance of something that you touched on before, of sharing personal stories and collaborating within communities and sharing our truths within the community. So please do, if you're listening right now, please let people know about Dan's work. Please do come along and see the exhibition. It's at Her Place Museum in Melbourne. And is it right that it's up until the 4th of December on Fridays, Saturdays and Sundays? Is that right, Dan?
Yeah, that's right, 11 till 3. And they've just announced that there will be a forum on the 11th. So they're looking to extend the exhibition to the 11th of December. So they're curating a forum at this point.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, Dans. Dans, I was just wondering, in the process of making this work and of sharing it, and in the grassroots sort of activism and things that you've done, is there anything, when you look back, that sticks in your mind as a highlight, or something that you feel that was particularly memorable for you, or where you felt like you were on the right track, or something that energized you to continue your work that maybe you could share with us?
Yeah, it's a strange thing, because I feel like, you know, I've been locked away into new parent land, and as I said, lockdowns in Melbourne, and my arts practice, I was fine with that taking a back seat, but this work and everything that's come with it has just all sort of naturally fallen into place. There's been so many people who've supported me, because, you know, when artists, we're on a single income, I don't do this for profit. I do this because I'm passionate about it. And so many people, from organisations to supporters to other artists, have really stepped in to help smooth the way. Even though there has been so many roadblocks, there's always been someone there to sort of lend an ear or support the work or open a door. And I'm just so grateful for that, because it just feels like everything in the right place, and it is moving forward without me. I mean, I'd say I'm not trying, because I do phone calls and emails and put the word out there, but it feels like a real coming together of community, and a strengthening and a healing of community. And I feel like that's probably the biggest feeling of positivity I get from it, is coming together and supporting one another and beginning to heal through this project.
Thank you so much, Dans. That makes good sense. I feel like we've taken up enough of your time, and we're so grateful to have you here on FW Live with us this week. Just another plug for the exhibition. It's called The Lost Petition. It is at Her Place Gallery in East Melbourne. The details are up in the thread.
Can I quickly add one more thing before we go? Because I know we're talking about pushback, and one thing that I need to mention is that I'm currently restricted on Facebook and Instagram through my art page because of the work I do. And every time I try to share this work, it gets taken down, or I'm completely blocked from doing it. So I really need to call on people power to share this work, to share the exhibition, to come and see it, and especially get men there, because men are such a huge part. We need men to dismantle this man-made patriarchy that we're in. And there's so many women that step up, and there are a few men as well, but we really need men on side to do this. So if you can get all the men you know out there to come and share the work, I would so appreciate it, because Facebook and Instagram, whether it's them or the algorithm, don't let me share it. So if you can, please do.
Yeah, I think that's a really important takeaway and a really important message to everybody who's here. Show up. show up, show yourself, stand with us, go to the exhibition, talk to your friends, talk to your communities, have uncomfortable conversations. This patriarchy is not serving anybody, and we all need to work together to dismantle that as best we can. And thank you, Dans, for your great work in doing that. We really appreciate that, and we see you, and we wish you all the very best for the exhibition.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. It's going to be a classic. I don't know how to end it theme.
We'll just smile and look into your eyes.
Yeah, it's beautiful, isn't it?